We usually like to start these informal group sessions, especially when there's not a specific topic, and there's not a specific topic today, with just some kind of short grounding type of meditation. I call it a grounding meditation just because, we're not trying to do anything special here. This is really just about becoming present. And, obviously we're always present in reality, but this is more about being okay with just being present right now. The goal of so much of the stuff that I talk about is goalless, in the sense that the focus is just on like being present right now. And when we are present right now, life just becomes easier for us. And the paradoxical thing is, it also seems like a lot of these manifesting principles work more effectively in our lives when we just are okay with what's going on right now. A lot of our struggles and stress come from just not being okay with what's happening right now. So if you want to put your hand over your heart if you want, or get in a comfortable position, or follow some kind of rhythmic breathing pattern, or recite an affirmation that resonates with you in your head, close your eyes, keep your eyes open. All that stuff's good. I don't think I'm going to do any of that. I've been talking a lot recently about just sitting. And that's what I'm going to do here, and just kind of, I guess, say a few words while I sit. Being present, more comfortable being present, is as simple as simply sitting in this way, or having your hand over your heart, or following your breath, or reciting a statement or affirmation over and over again. Doesn't need to be complicated. The paradox is, we can't screw this up. A lot of the day, it's like we're thinking like, what am I going to do wrong? That's like the subconscious thought. It's like the imaginative thought. It's like, what's going to happen that can be incorrect here, that's wrong here. And the truth is, there's never anything wrong with what's here. What's here is here. And that either sounds really flippant if you look at it in one way, like it looks just kind of like it's putting off pain and stress and anxiety, or it strikes you as being truthful. And I see why people would say it's just a kind of a flippant, just making light of things when you just are here now. I get that. But I think if you practice just being here more often, you'll get to a point relatively quickly where you realize this is actually like your salvation in a weird way. Because this is something you can always depend on. Here, the present moment. And the present moment is strangely much more forgiving and open, or if we're using an LOA buzzword, expansive, than we usually give it credit for. So here we are in the present moment, doing nothing, grounding ourselves to just be here right now. And we can't screw up just being here right now. And if we then want to work on improving certain things in our external world through utilizing various manifesting or self-improvement techniques, we can do that too. We can put that on top of just being here now. That's totally fine. But the point is, we can have fun, more fun at least, trying to do that if we recognize that this being present and already being here right now is always happening. And it requires no special technique. This is not a manifesting technique. This is just, acknowledging and embracing what's going on right now. Most of you know I'm a big fan of that Richard Dott's book, Dissolve the Problem. And, he talks about how in that book, he really goes in detail about how if there's no problem right now, there's no need for any solution either. And if we can live our life viscerally, experientially, more in that manner, and this isn't about being perfect or anything, that's trying to solve a problem. If we just do this more, I think we realize that we have less problems in our life than we expected. So it's a mixture of pragmatic advice and I guess you could say more esoteric psychological advice. But the point is almost always the same. I mean, if you go back and listen to my podcast from the first episode, we're just talking about be present, be present. And sometimes in the podcast episodes, I go off track and talk about other things, but then it always comes back to be present, be present. And I'm talking to myself when I say that, not just to you. Very helpful practice for most of us to do that. And when we're present, the other interesting thing that can happen is that we what we regard as ourself, that starts to kind of dissolve a little bit. You know, Dot said like dissolve the problem, but you also dissolve the self in a good way, in a comfortable way, where what you think you are, what, you know, often seems to be limiting you, you realize is not real. What's real is right now. Interesting, you know? And there's all these different variables and ways of looking at this that that are very helpful. It's not like you have to follow what I'm saying right now to understand what I'm saying. You know, I'm not giving you like a certain formula. This isn't a math equation. This isn't a science, as far as I'm concerned, at least, as much as it is an art. You know, I think Neville said, Neville said something along those lines back in the 40s. But, you know, I mean, we hear so much today about science, and science is great, but a lot of this stuff, because it's something we're experiencing individually, subjectively, at least to me, feels a lot more like an art than a science. So you create the formula, you fill in the gaps for yourself, but grounding yourself, being present in the moment, almost always seems to help. So let's get rolling. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them via video, via audio, via the chat, whatever works for you. And we'll go from there. And if nobody has questions, this will be the shortest group coaching call ever. Nobody has questions, I will just keep on talking. But yeah, speak up if you want to. There's no rush. All right, no one's got questions. Wow. I have a feeling that some questions will come up sooner or later. Just thinking about what I want to talk about. Here's a question coming up right now. I'll read that first. Hello, I would like some tips on how to believe we control our world with our thoughts. And yes, you can ask a question afterwards. Absolutely. People can start writing questions in the chat box if they don't want to be on audio with me. But let's jump into this first. Just in time too, because I was about to go off on a real riff. I'm just kidding. I don't know what I was going to speak about. Yes. So, like some tips on how to believe we control our world with our thoughts. So, this has been something that has been on my mind recently. I actually posted a video today, as did Cecilia and Maggie, regarding tragedy and how that comes up against like Neville's philosophy about how you control what happens in your reality. And it's also been on my mind because you see a lot of people with kind of these like egotistical or delusional takes on what Neville is saying. At least in my opinion, I think it's delusional and egotistical. Other people don't necessarily agree with that. But basically, this idea that the law of assumption, Neville's advice, means that you just control everything. And I never really interpreted it that way. I always thought it was more like, I think like this questioner is asking, you know, we have much more control over our thinking and our thoughts than we normally suppose we do. And the person, unsurprisingly, that's helped me the most with this in terms of practically applying it in my life has not been Neville. Neville gave me more like the foundational groundwork that was like a possibility. And he gave all these great examples of how people did that by using their imagination. But it was really Emile Coué that has helped me believe that we do control what happens to us in large, at least generally speaking, through our thinking. How we react to things in our world and how the world treats us is largely, or at least significantly, dependent on how we think about the world, how we think about ourselves. But it's tough because the way it's interpreted in the current social media law of assumption space is very literal. And I think the literal interpretation is crazy. I mean, I really do. I think it's this delusional, narcissistic, very unhealthy way to look at things. While the way that's, I think Neville intended it was a very like spiritual and mature, golden rule oriented way of looking at things. And that's certainly the way that Coué always expressed it as well. So to believe that you control your thoughts, Coué would say, if you state that you are gaining faith, if you believe that you are master of yourself, you become so. So how do we believe we are masters of ourselves, if we want to use that language? Obviously, that language is like, I don't want to call it antiquated, but use it to use whatever term works for you. How do you become more confident that you control your thoughts? Because this really is all about having confidence, self-confidence that you have a level of control that most of society says you do not have. So the simplest way I know of to do that is Coué's recommendations. It's not Neville's recommendations, because a lot of people have trouble following Neville's recommendations because they have trouble visualizing or they have trouble feeling it as if it's real. Coué basically just says, at his essence, you just state something over and over again, and you start to believe it more and more by repeating it to yourself over and over and over again. And you can do this, before bed, or in a sleepy state when you get up, or periodically throughout the day, which is basically what Coué advocated for. Or you can do it more actively. We call it active affirming, like what Sammy Ingram talks about, where you're constantly stating a phrase or a couple phrases over and over and over and over again, even if you feel bad, still stating a phrase over and over and over again. And then another way is to speak out loud to yourself. So in other words, if you have like negative chatter in your mind, as we often do, saying, this isn't going to work, this is not possible, this is not, you can't control your mind this way, your thinking is not malleable the way you think. you speak out loud to that part of you, to that thinking, and say, oh, yes, this is going to work. I'm going to figure this out. This is happening more and more. I know if I believe it more and more, if I keep on stating it more and more, it is going to happen. This is going to work. I'm going to figure out how this works. All these people have said this works this way. I believe them. This is working more and more. And you can go on speaking to yourself in that way, or any way. You can speak out loud to yourself in any way that you find productive. And you will start to convince yourself through your out loud self-talk that this is working, that you are getting better, that you are getting more self-confident. So language, in my opinion, is the easiest way to start to believe that you control your thinking more and more. And again, I don't want to make an absolute case here, like you can control all your thoughts or you can't control all your thoughts. I'm more interested in the pragmatic aspect where you can feel more and more confident. And, auto-suggestion is basically faith done right. Israel Regardie, when talking about Neville's techniques, said, that's why Neville is so effective, his techniques, because you're basically auto-suggesting to yourself your ideal and you believe it because you're suggesting it so clearly. Interestingly, and I think I'll talk about this soon on my YouTube channel, I've been reading this book by Cyrus Harry Brooks, who was, associated with Coué and wrote the classic book, The Practice of Autosuggestion. The year after he wrote that, he wrote with a gentleman, his last name I think was Charles, who I think was a reverend, a book called Christianity and Autosuggestion. This is a book that I fully admit I just slept on. I mean, I read it, or I glanced at it, I should say, back in like 2016, 2017, when I was getting into Coué. And I didn't look at it again. I was like, oh, that's interesting. This confirms a lot of what Coué is saying. But I haven't looked at it in like 6 years. I'm looking at it now, reading it closely. And it explains the link between faith and autosuggestion being what we're saying to ourselves over and over again. And we're always autosuggesting to ourselves. It's just, are we conscious of what we're autosuggesting, or are we positively auto-suggesting what we want, or are we negatively auto-suggesting what we want? This book, Christianity and Autosuggestion, really makes the direct link and explains how faith and autosuggestion, practically speaking, are one and the same thing. And it's a masterful book, and it links Christianity and the teachings of Jesus with autosuggestion. So to show you how non-serious this LOA community is, I've never heard anybody speak about that book on YouTube or anything. And, again, this is like why people think I'm a scholar. I'm not a scholar. I'm just a person. If I was a scholar or an academic, I would have read that whole book back in 2017 more closely, because I don't know if I would have understood it as well as I perhaps understand it now, because I have more experience with Coué. But you can instill faith in yourself by believing that your faith is growing. In this book, for instance, Brooks and Charles talk about how Jesus said, or implied basically, like with Lazarus, when he's trying to raise the dead, basically, he asked God for faith to believe it was possible, because even Jesus had doubts. And so not having the faith in and of himself to raise a person from the dead, and not knowing exactly what to do, he asked in that moment for faith. Now, I don't know if that's accurate. Please, if you're a biblical scholar or somebody who's really into the Bible, don't, attack me for this. But it was just an example of how interesting and illustrative that book is, connecting what we're thinking, what we're suggesting to ourselves with Christianity and spirituality, and the kind of stuff that someone like Neville or Joseph Murphy talks about. I hope that helps. And yeah, your follow-up was, I do see that I've managed to change my thoughts and feelings around many things. Of course you have. I mean, throughout your life, throughout all our lives, we change how we think and feel about things. We just constantly do. And what Coué and all these teachers are saying is you have much, 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 much more control over that than is commonly supposed. And one of the difficult things for a lot of us is we're exposed to, all this material and all these, basically everything in our lives is saying you don't have this power. It's only when you go to these, on YouTube or read these authors that they say you have this power. But most of us are surrounded by people and, work or settings where people don't think that way. So you have to convince yourself more and more. And listen, the easiest way to do that, if you don't know what to do, besides just asking for more faith, is to just, again, study Coué and just follow the general formula. And at night before bed and in the morning when you get up, say, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better over and over again. Or say day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better, and say it over and over again. Or say another general phrase like that you can get behind, that resonates with you. And the more faith you have, the more confidence you have that it will work, the faster it will work for you to start seeing the results you want. But what someone like Coué says, and something that Sammy Ingram points out so well, is even if you don't have faith, if you keep on saying it a lot, it's going to start to do things. You're going to start to believe. So again, this is what is fascinating about these principles, and is hugely underappreciated. So yeah, if I always recommend to people that they check out Coué. And if you want to see like a really direct link, like I said, I'm sure we'll get more into this in the coming weeks, probably with this book, check out Christianity and Autosuggestion. Okay. Just going to go back here. Paula. Okay. Here's a question. You mentioned Sammy Ingram's style of affirming. I've never tried that. Have you experienced that working? What about it working for a large goal? I have experienced it working in my own life. Yes, I personally have used it for like short-term goals. In other words, like if I have an event that worries me, I gave an example last year of like when my wife was pregnant and going into labor, and it had been like a difficult pregnancy. And the labor didn't seem to be going that great, like using it then and then having like a very successful, fast labor after having difficulties. I tend to use it like that because I find it most easy to repeat something over and over and over and over and over again if it's a short period of time. But if you just want to do it for 10 or 20 or 30 minutes a day, and Sammy, I think, advocates doing it for at least 10 minutes a day if this is like your primary technique or one of your main techniques, it works great. It's like a general thing. I mean, a lot of the time I will do a general statement such as every day in every way I'm getting better and better. I will actively affirm that Sammy Ingram style if I'm taking a walk or something like that for 10 plus minutes, 10 or 20 or 30 minutes. And you'll notice right away, not right away, but usually by the time 10 minutes have passed or 20 minutes have passed, your state has changed and you're more expectant. One reason for that a lot of the time is there's not a lot of pressure if it's a general statement and you're not actively trying to do something, and not trying to actively change something, I should say. You just get into a better frame of mind. But it absolutely works for large goals. I mean, Sammy, I disagree with plenty of the things she says, but she has way too many successful testimonials. And I've had some clients that have utilized basically just her approach, who've had major shifts in their life by just affirming something over and over again. And again, the reason it works so well, in my opinion, is because you can only think one thing at once. And if you jam something in there enough times, you start to believe it more and more, and your expectancy grows and grows, and it shifts things in your life. So it's it's an approach. It's all it is an approach. It's a technique. And the reason I like it so much is because it's a technique you can use when you feel bad. You don't have to feel good to use it. So many of these LOA techniques, it's like, all right, relax, make sure you're relaxed first, then you can do it. Well, when you feel like crap, it's hard to relax. And, I'm all about showing, talking about different ways of relaxing when you feel bad. But the power of active affirming, Sammy Ingram style affirming, is it's better to feel good. It's better to feel expectant, obviously, right? It's better, frankly, to be able to affirm in the Joseph Murphy or Neville way, where you say, thank you, thank you, thank you, and you really believe it. And then it happens quickly because of that. But when you have none of that, you still have your language. You still have what you're thinking over and over and over again. And that's when that tool can be super helpful. But you can do it when you feel good. You can do it when you're taking a walk. You can do it throughout the day. A lot of people, myself, when I've done it more heavily at times, like you notice it's just kind of like a track in the back of your mind going, like when nothing else is happening, which can be very helpful. It absolutely works. And it's not the technique for everybody, but it's a great technique because it works when people are desperate. I mean, that's the connection with so much of this SP stuff, is there's so many desperate people who have SP situations, and like they can't feel good a lot of the time. So they start with this. That's really not, that's not ideal, but at least it's something, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, okay. Just moving on here. Like I said, I'm no ace when it comes to this chat stuff whatsoever. Kate Finley wrote, I think it's more that our experience generally reflects our dominant assumptions, beliefs. Keywords are general and dominant. And like you say, Tim, a thought can become dominant through repetition. It's usually not this instantaneous thing, though it certainly can be. Yes, well said. Exactly, Kate. I agree. Question about auto-suggestion when it comes to health, and not the most common topic on your page, but what about manifesting pregnancy? That's a good one. So, you know, Coué was primarily seen as someone who helped people heal. You know, his philosophy works for manifesting all kinds of things, but he was primarily seen as a healer, even though he would himself say, I don't heal anybody, you heal yourself. So I would really recommend looking at his stuff. In regards to pregnancy, tough topic for a lot of people, because if you're trying to get pregnant and you're having difficulties, there's usually a lot of resistance there. Again, the Coué approach is more forgiving and easier than most of these approaches. For instance, the Neville approach of like visualizing you're already pregnant, that can be tough for a lot of people. For some people, it can work incredibly well. But with Coué, you can do many things to just get behind the idea that you could be pregnant, or you are going to be pregnant, or that, you know, you are going to be pregnant. And, you know, Coué said you can even decide the sex of the baby. Whether you believe that or not is, you know, I mean, that's debatable. To give some personal examples with this, because I actually have personal examples, my wife and I had a little bit of trouble with our first daughter getting pregnant. And I was aware of Coué by then, and I definitely utilized some of his stuff to encourage myself and to encourage my, you know, to encourage the pregnancy. Let's put it that way. Did it have anything to do with it? Who knows? I believe it did. We also wanted a daughter, and I said from the beginning, from conception, it's going to be a daughter, and it was a daughter. Our second daughter, I was into Coué. I'm thinking back at the dates here. I was into the Coué that was back in like 2017. So I was already into Coué, but I was relatively new to his stuff. Our daughter that was born in 2022, I was well versed in Coué. And so, as I mentioned, there was a lot of stuff going on with, like, my wife had a miscarriage, and there was just a lot of anxiety about getting pregnant, and whether it was going to happen, because my wife was 39 at the time. Or was she 40? Yeah, no, she was 39 at the time. And so I was doing a lot of affirming. And what's interesting is, she had this miscarriage, and then there was, grief over that. And then also, like I said, that fear of like, well, how about if, this doesn't happen? So it's like working through that, affirming kind of through that. And it was very strange. I mean, it was like, it was that, I don't know, it seemed more like a Neville thing, honestly. Like I knew when my wife was pregnant, I feel like when she became pregnant, like right away. I knew before she did, I feel like. And then she was pregnant. And then it's like, oh, we're gonna have another daughter. We had another daughter. Now that could just be chance, you know, whatever. I don't ascribe that to chance the second time. But yeah, my wife had, you know, it wasn't the easiest pregnancy. She had like, you know, preeclampsia and stuff like that. So there's a lot of affirming and constant, like when, you know, when I thought about this subject, it was easy to get stressed about it. Let's put it that way, right? So affirming when I didn't feel good about it was at least something I could do, as was just thinking of God. I mean, those of you that are familiar with my approach know that I think like one of my auto suggestions is just like, I just like God is like God, or like, you know, we are one with God, or I am one with God, or something about God. Because like the absolute method is go to God, and it's like the healer of all this, you know, the solution to all things. So there was a lot of that. So how that pertains to your situation, I'm not exactly sure, but my point is that autosuggestion without question can be an aid for pregnancy and for healing in general. And again, refer to Kue. He is the master at explaining this in simple terms. I've also made, you know, many videos at this point and podcast episodes about his approach, which is a playlist you can find on my YouTube channel. Yeah, if you have follow-up questions, let me know about that. All right, let's see. If anybody wants to speak up and ask a question via audio, go ahead. Yeah, Jamie. Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Are you muted, Jamie?
But here.
Oh, perfect.
Can you hear me now?
I can. How are you?
Okay, perfect. Hold on, mate. 1 sec. Hold on. Shit. Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. First of all, thank you very much for doing the coaching session today. Much appreciated. My question I wanted to ask you is in relation to the practical tips, but really around the role of music. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, clearly one of the things that we're all trying to do here is trying to raise what I feel is the vibrational essence of us, or trying to get in touch with that core and try to drown out all the thinking. Do you yourself use music or advise using music, etc.? Because certainly what I've found is that when I tend to listen to instrumental music or music without lyrics, that really does help like lift my vibration a lot, and it helps a lot with the healing and the work that I'm trying to do. Is that something that you do yourself? Because I'm just interested here, and is it something that you advise? Thank you.
Yeah, great question, Jamie. Thanks for asking. I got to talk about this more. I made a video last year, I think, or I don't know, sometime not too recently about this. This is like, the answer is yes. Okay. It's like a wholehearted 100% yes. This is the kind of obvious atoms solution to like raising our vibration, or, you know, feeling better, or whatever we want to call it. That is so obvious. It's like jumping up and down and making, it's like something like that. Like it's so obvious that people just forget about it, including me. Like, I don't talk about it nearly enough. I mean, that's in a way, that's because there's nothing to say. It's so obvious, but still it should be repeated over and over again. Music that we like is a great facilitator of shifting how we feel and shifting into more of the ideal state we want to be in. And you should use it as much as you want. You should definitely use it if it works for you. I know for me, you know, besides the stuff I talk about, like in the joy of not thinking, like jumping up and down or talking out loud, one of my other real go-tos, if like nothing else seems to be working, is like I will take a drive and listen to music I like. You know, usually if I'm in a bad place, if I feel bad, I'll listen to loud music. Like I'll listen to the Rolling Stones really loudly, you know. But also if I'm in a more creative place, I'll listen to classical music. And, I like most people or many people, I like all different kinds of music, and I listen to different things depending on my mood. But it's a hugely effective tool. And what I like to tell people is some people feel like we have this this idea that there's we're cheating or something, there's certain there's certain, it's well, there's certain things we shouldn't do because we can't always have music at our disposal or something like that. There's some people who think that it's a cheat code. That's absurd. You're trying to raise your default vibration or get yourself into a different state, whatever language you want to use. Music is one of the easiest ways to do that, for a lot of us at least. So that that makes sense, right?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. That was the answer that I was hoping to hear. Cheers,
Good.
mate.
Yeah, just email me if you have any. You can ask me any other questions you have about it. Kate, I see your hands raised. Do you have anything to add to that?
Oh, yes, I was just going to add, yeah, I definitely utilize music, and I actually have a nightly ritual where every night I'll just I have a playlist, and I'll dance for an hour, and I call it my dance meditation. And sometimes I'll choose songs with kind of uplifting lyrics that I can really get into, and then other times I kind of just I'll have affirmations or sort of empowering inner conversations that I'll repeat to myself. But yeah, I think it's definitely a powerful tool. And then if you can add movement into it, then I think it makes it even more powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you. And, something else that's worth mentioning that I occasionally get asked is well, should I stay away from music that has negative lyrics or lyrics that are, sad songs, basically? And my answer to that is absolutely not, because a lot of the time how we can process difficult things we're going through is by going on the musical journey with the artist and, experiencing it musically, as opposed to experiencing it other ways that are less pleasurable in our life.
Definitely.
Yeah. And, actually going back to Cyrus Harry Brooks, in the practice of autosuggestion, he talks about how we should avoid art or media that is just callous and just kind of exploitive of our feelings. But he says beautiful art, like a beautiful piece of music or a beautiful film or whatever, you're going to go on that emotional journey with it. And it's a beautiful healing and educational tool. So again, that's just, I think this is a pretty obvious solution to a lot of the stress and feeling stuck that we just don't hear enough about. And yeah, it's definitely use music however you like, and just don't limit yourself. Use it however you like throughout the day, or like Kate was saying, at night before you go to bed or what have you. Yeah. So I'm going to just keep on reading some questions here. What happened to our silent retreat? I've been able to adopt Neville's teachings more through the paradigm of the subconscious mind, and have become aware of various limiting beliefs operating in my life, perhaps as a result of trauma. My question is, how do we know when our desired beliefs administered through autosuggestion have taken place in our subconscious mind? Outcomes. I think there's a lot of different ways to interpret or answer that question. I think one of the main things we can focus on in that regard, I'm going to read this last part of the question again. The question is, how do we know when our desired beliefs administered through autosuggestion have taken place in our subconscious mind and the results are not forced temporary outcomes? What comes to mind for me right away is Neville talked about that feeling of naturalness. When something becomes natural, feels more like your default, it's more likely to manifest. And if you're forcing it, if you feel like you're auto-suggesting, but it's not taking, That's fine too. But that just means it doesn't, the more natural it feels, what you're auto-suggesting, the more easily it's going to manifest in your external life. Now, what is interesting, what we've talked about some and what Sammy sometimes talks about, is that if you're auto-suggesting a lot or have been auto-suggesting for a certain thing for a long period of time, you still might have a lot of seemingly conscious doubt. And a lot of times when you feel like you're forcing it, and then strangely, the external thing that you wanted that you've been auto-suggesting for and feel like you're no closer to getting suddenly appears, even though you still have all this conscious doubt that that's going to happen. That's a weird phenomenon that's more common than you would think. And when we get outside of these small LOA circles and general self-improvement, general stuff that like successful people go through, they talk a lot about that too, where they're trying, they have a goal in mind, they're thinking about it, trying, failing, but not giving up, trying. They're trying. They just keep on going. They're like a bulldozer, right? And they don't accept no as an answer, which is what you're doing by suggesting something over and over again. And then the thing manifests. Sometimes it might be because they've momentarily given up, and then there's that gap there so it can appear, but it could also be that they've just had it in mind for so long that enough of their subconscious mind has accepted it as a default, even though there's still this large part of the conscious mind that has not. This is one reason you hear all the time, and like Murphy's got that famous quote that like when you're 51% certain that a thing's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so in instances like these, perhaps you're only 55% certain that something's going to happen, but there's still that 45% that's like, no, this is crazy, this is ridiculous. So you're basically like, oh, this is just, I'm forcing this still, it's not going to happen. And the next day it happens. So those are just different ways of looking at it. I don't think we understand this stuff enough to say that like, this is why this limiting belief, went from being a forced thing that was bothering me to something I relieved myself of and something manifested because of it. I think it's more on a pragmatic level, you just keep going until you get it. If you really want something external, or you keep going until what you want externally has shifted more to your liking. So in other words, what you've been suggesting for perhaps months on end or longer might never materialize, might never manifest externally, but you realize things about yourself and things in your life change to a point where you don't really care about what you were initially auto-suggesting for months on end. See, again, all of this stuff is so nuanced. It's not black and white. It's very gray. Usually like we're dealing with these gray issues. And when we have a formula that works for us well, one reason to just keep on following that is because you have something that's not as gray. But a lot of the time, it's like we're just kind of going forward. Like, when my wife was having all these pregnancy, anxieties and issues, I was like, pregnancy is a weird thing, like you can't, it's like Neville like to say, like, you can't be halfway pregnant, right? Like, it's like, I didn't know exactly what to do because like I couldn't consistently visualize my wife being pregnant when she wasn't. I could feel it sometimes I couldn't, but I knew I could keep on affirming. I knew I could keep on having faith that it would happen in some way, even if there were doubts. And that at least helped me feel better about it, right? And then it ended up materializing. But the grayness of limiting beliefs and moving through them, coming to peace with them, is a process that is going to be unique and individual to all of us. And it can be different for one thing as it is for something else. Like, health might be a big issue for some people and money is not, and vice versa for somebody else, so it's realizing you're human and that these principles are to be worked with in like a gentle, malleable way. So we don't beat ourselves up because somebody on YouTube said, oh, I did it this way and it manifested in this amount of time and my limiting beliefs were dissipated just like that. give yourself some credit. You're your own best teacher, you know? I mean, it's you, you know, and have faith in yourself in that way. I'm just looking at some questions here. What time is it? Okay. What if you affirm something like, all I want comes to me immediately for keeps, preemptively perfect and complete, so as not to have a micromanage a ton of different things and still include the element of surprise? So what if you affirm something like, all I want comes to me immediately for keeps, preemptively perfect and complete? I mean, that's a great affirmation if it feels right to you. I never really tell people what to say for their affirmations. I like to recommend people keep it general because it's easier usually for most people, but it's like, how does it make you feel? If you can easily get behind the affirmation or the statement, the auto-suggestion, all the same thing. If you can easily get behind it, it's going to be easier for it to happen in your life. It's going to be easier to feel it. It's going to be easier for you to build momentum behind it, to keep on saying it, to change, to change it slightly, the statement, so it's more, so it fits it even better. The point of Coué's general suggestions, keeping it so general, is for the reason that, you're asking here. It includes, you don't have to micromanage a ton of different things. And it includes an element of surprise still. Every day in every way, I'm getting better and better. Day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better. That's supposed to include everything, basically. And there's all these different variations of a general phrase like that. And if you have a spiritual bent, that can just be like, we are one with God, or I am one with God, or, I am God, or we are God, something that is general and includes everything. Again, I've been reading a lot of Brooks lately, Cyrus Harry Brooks, and he's saying how Coué was like, always keep it general unless you want to work on a specific thing. And you can have an auto suggestion for a specific thing and use the general affirmation as well. Coué said specifically, during the day, especially if something's bothering you, don't be afraid to suggest for the specific thing working better or healing. But he said, usually keep it general. The less friction, the less resistance towards the statement, the easier it is for it to be accepted and become your default. When it becomes more of your default, linking it up with the last question, it feels more and more natural, and it starts to manifest in your life. Then it does manifest in your life, and you don't feel like you have to even state it anymore because it's part of who you are. Something like every day in every way I'm getting better and better, you can continuously use a statement like that because you can always get better. Now, another way to look at that might not resonate for you, because you might be thinking something like, well, the universe is perfect, God is perfect, so there's nothing to get better. In which case you could use something like, everything is perfect, everything is already perfect, everything is already perfect, everything is perfect. And isn't it? If you look at it that way, you understand? So it's about what feels alive and real to you. And once you've happened upon statements that work well for you, rely on those, but also don't be afraid to change them. For instance, for me recently, over the years, I've experimented doing a lot of this different stuff. And sometimes I find that like saying we instead of I for affirmations is very helpful. And like, I'm going through one of those phases right now. Like day by day, in every way, we're getting better and better. Not I am, we are. We're getting wealthier and wealthier. We're getting healthier and healthier. That feels more true to me these days. It might not next week, but right now that feels more true to me when I say it than I. But is there any big difference? I don't think so. Like, what resonates? What feels good? And then that's something you can repeat and get more to be your default as you go through your day. If people have any audio or video questions, they can just hop on too. I'm just reading the chat box here. Thank you. Good. Glad that helped. Okay, so my goal is a career goal. I've wanted this for a while. I've visualized the end result. I'm taking steps towards it, but I still feel like I'm not getting any closer to it. So it sounds like you're doing the right things in the 3D, the external right steps. So you're taking steps towards it, but still there's this sense of inner dissatisfaction. How can we shift that feeling of inner dissatisfaction, of not getting closer to it, to feeling like you are getting closer to it? You know, what statement or statements would make you feel that way? Visualization is great. But you know, when it doesn't work, when you don't feel it, what would help you feel it? A statement can help, or statements. That statement can be, I'm getting close. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm getting closer and closer to my goal. Or things are getting better and better, or day by day in every way, I'm getting better and better, or day by day, more and more things are working out to my liking. You know, everything is working in my favor more and more. Statements like that repeated over and over again start to do something and can be used with visualization and other LOA tools to make you feel more and more expectant. The more expectant you are, the more belief you have in something changing, the more likely and faster things are going to change externally, usually. And again, sometimes we don't know. You've been working on this for a while. You still might have a significant amount of doubt, like 40% doubt, but you put in enough subconscious work on your subconscious that like there's that 60% belief it is going to happen. And so eventually that outweighs the doubt. And again, when we look back and don't just see this from this narrow LOA view and see, you know, high achievers in the business world and the creative world and the sports world, it's often like this. They're thinking they're going to fail until the 11th hour when it happens. So this is not crazy, but this feeling that I'm not getting any closer to it is a limiting belief that can be neutralized and worked on so you feel you are getting closer and closer to it. And again, if we want to get really general, we can get really general. If we don't even want to be thinking specifically about it, we can, you know, revert back to every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, or everything is perfect, or, you know, I don't know, anything like that, you know, the stuff we just went over, any type of general statement that you like. I think many of the manifesting futures are all about the tense and affirming. It must be present or past tense. Present OG past tense. I'm not sure I understand. I don't know if that's a misspelling or, I mean, regardless, I think I know what you're asking. So tenses don't matter. That's the answer. I don't believe in any type of, I mean, the most common thing, there's a couple common things I think are just untrue and inaccurate. First of all, it has to be an I am statement. That's utter horseshit. 10 times out of 10, it does not have to be an I am statement. If you just say health, 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 or, you know, God, 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 or wealth, 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 you really think that's not going to do anything? I am statements are great if you like using it, but don't feel like you have to use an I am statement. Murphy talks about this in several places. The Power of Your Subconscious Mind, or How to Attract Money, are two that stand out. He talks about like the guy shaving in front of the mirror and saying over and over again, like wealth, success, prosperity, and like doing that for 5 minutes each day or 10 minutes each day. Wealth, success, prosperity, just the words, and intentionally not putting I am there because it would put too much pressure on him. Just the words with calm conviction. And, you know, Murphy said he had, you know, so many success stories from businessmen and who just did that. Now the present test is totally unnecessary as well. This is kind of like the Neville thing where it's like, it's already happened. I already am a decamillionaire. I don't even know what decamillionaire means. Like I'm already a multimillionaire. I'm already a multimillionaire. Now, for some people, especially if you're very familiar with Neville and you've done visualization stuff, you can get behind that statement. There's a lot of energy behind it's already happened. I am now already this. So if there's energy behind it, if it resonates with you, utilize a statement like that. But again, and this is important because a lot of people don't understand it because it's spoken about so poorly. You can just say, I am going to. I am going to be a decamillionaire, or I am going to be a multimillionaire. I am going to, I am going to, I am going to, I am going to, I am going to. When you say something, it makes you visualize it in the present. Even if you're saying, I am going to be a multimillionaire, what you're visualizing in your mind very, very quickly is multimillionaire. That idea that like going to means you'll never get there is utter horseshit. Don't listen to people who say that. Psycho-Cybernetics and Matt Fury, who runs the Psycho-Cybernetics Foundation, he speaks much more passionately than me about this. The I am thing and the it has to be present limit a lot of people. If it feels good, say it. But the point is, say it however you want. And again, a lot of credit to Sammy for saying the same thing. She says, say your statements however you want. There are no rules in terms of it. Whatever feels good that resonates with you, say it. And when you're repeating something many, 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 many times, it's not always going to feel great or spectacular. You're going to get bored. You're going to have doubts. But if you are doing an active affirming type thing, you still should like the statement, even if you don't feel anything while you're saying it some of the time. Even if you doubt whether it's going to happen, you still want to resonate with it. The most important thing is believing it as much as you can. And thinking of statements that resonate with you will make you believe it more easily. Next question. In theory, I totally believe in LOA and I affirm, but every time the 3D shows me my old story, I freak out. So I feel I keep on staying in my old story. Any tips? I have a big deadline and need a business partner, so I'm very anxious about it deep down, even though I keep on affirming. So that's terrific to notice. So that's awareness. I mean, again, you could argue plenty of people would disagree with me there, but like one reason Neville Talk says like the power of awareness is you're aware of this. And that's, in my opinion, a large part of what LOA is intellectually in some part of you already completely believes in this stuff, but then there's other parts of you that just don't believe. And that's totally understandable because again, we get outside these very small LOA circles and most people are going to tell you this is absolutely nonsense or magical thinking or what have you. And so that part of you freaks out. No problem. But the problem is you want to shift, you want to change, and that part of you is keeping you stuck, or you feel that part of you is keeping you stuck at least. At the moment, I have a big deadline and need a business partner, so I'm very anxious about it deep down, even though I keep on affirming. Yeah, I mean, the issue is this, even though you're affirming, and I think your affirming is probably doing something, it's not enough to neutralize all of that fear and anxiety. So, one thing I would say is, you might have already looked at this, but I have a short playlist that's called, I think, Manifesting Through Difficult Emotions or Difficult Feelings. It might be worth it to look at the videos on that playlist. The other thing is just to understand, again, and you probably do if you're, if you have a business partner and if you're doing stuff in the business world or what have you, people who don't know about these principles or only know about self-improvement, they're anxious all the time. And they still get things to happen. You understand? It's not like you have to do these things correctly in an LOA way with the LOA formula in order for them to happen. Affirming is good, like we've gone over, because it helps you when you don't feel good, right? You can do more of it. You can also ask for faith, as we were speaking about earlier. You can ask for, like, please give me more faith that this is working. Please give me more faith to believe this is working. That's a fine thing to say or to auto-suggest or to ask yourself. And you can use all these tools that, we often talk about, to try to neutralize the anxiety, jumping up and down, listening to music, being playful, sitting very still, vibing out, talking out loud, things like that. But if if those feelings and that fear is still there, you just acknowledge it, and you can feel into it. You can feel into the emotions, and you can start a dialogue asking these feelings, like, what do you want from me right now? It seems like you're scared. What do you want me to do? If you do that, that might help too. I see your follow-up here. Also, by watching Sammy, I am realizing that I have the mentality to try to fix things, including me, and that everything is difficult. So that's the first thing I need to work on, I guess. It's not necessarily the first thing you need to work on, but that's a great thing to be aware of, is that, again, very understandably, most of us have this default, even if we're extremely familiar with these principles on paper, that we have to fix something, that we have to do something right. And this exercise we did at the beginning of this session is like just saying, no, you don't have to do anything. Everything already is right. Everything already is perfect. Including you. You're already perfect. And realizing that. And, instead of everything is difficult, everything is easy, because it's easy to be you right now, because you are you right now. So, that's a good thing. Don't feel like there's a first thing you have to work on. Work on what feels most right to you. But use these tools. Affirmations, again, are a great tool. Use whatever works. If you feel a lot of pressure, acknowledge it, feel it if you can. Don't deny the feelings of pressure if they're there. That's totally fine. And you're here. And if you're, you can, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, everything is perfect. Or you can simply pray to God in the cliche way, in the sense of like the absolute method where like God is here right now, everything is perfect. If you're into that kind of spiritual bent to these principles, which some people are and some people are not. Yeah, if you have a big deadline, I feel anxious and it makes me not believe. Sure. So you've got a big deadline and that makes you anxious. That's a great thing that you acknowledged. That has nothing to do with your belief. You have a big deadline and you feel anxious. So the deadline is making you anxious. That's all that is. Nothing to do with belief. Your prior programming, or whatever you want to call it, has made it so like deadline triggers you, right? And then you tie belief into not believing this will work. It has nothing to do with belief. You're just triggered by the deadline. Genevieve Rackham, who's like a wealth coach who I like, she's got a great saying, which I'm going to paraphrase here. I don't think it's, paraphrasing it. It's, worrying about the future is lack in the now. Worrying about the future is lack in the now. So you feel anxious because, you have a deadline that triggers these emotions to make you feel anxious. So now it's not about the deadline anymore. Just go to the anxious thing. Feel the anxiousness, that feeling. You can ask it what it wants. And you can also acknowledge, in a way, even with this anxiousness here, you are okay right now. If you're okay right now, you are not experiencing lack in the now. Just a feeling is passing through you. And then it doesn't have to have anything to do with believing this stuff works or doesn't work. Just a feeling. Because like really, like you're okay no matter what happens. And I know that sounds, that's kind of, again, like seems like a silly thing to say, but like you're here right now. You get a bad feeling. We get a bad feeling. Think we're something wrong. We project this fearful future. But how about if just, I have a bad feeling. And that's all it is. Everything's still perfect. I have a bad feeling. And I'm not saying it doesn't hurt, doesn't scare us. That's fine, but still like you're okay right now. As opposed to worrying about the future, which is lacking the now. The more present you can stay, the more aware of your feelings you are, the more easily you'll move through this. And something's going to happen in regards to what happens next, something. And you can either embrace that or not embrace it. And if you embrace it, it's going to feel better. And in all likelihood, it'll be easier for everything to happen the way it should. But if you're aware of these principles, trying the best you can, doing everything right to the best of your ability, then it just is what it is. You're doing everything right. There's nothing else to do. You just do the best you can do. Cecilia had a good question the other day, I think on her podcast, where it was like, if I died tomorrow, would I feel okay or fulfilled with what I did today? And if you can answer yes to that, then I don't think you really have much to worry about. Like, because I know for me, like I've got sometimes very busy days, because like I'm working and I'm with the kids and there's a bunch of stuff going on. But then like when I ask myself a question like that, I'm like, yeah, I'm usually like, if I die tomorrow, would I be fulfilled with what I did today? Would I be satisfied with what I did today? Did I do the right thing, what I should do today? And the answer is usually yes. That's a good way to look at it, to take a step back. There's nothing wrong with you. Don't worry about the deadline. Kate Finley wrote, yes, think of all the times you've accomplished your goals despite being fearful, doubtful, negative. These feelings can be there and we can still make things happen. Exactly. And that's how a lot of businessmen and people like that live their lives. Their whole professional lives are like that. One heart attack after another. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, people live with this high level anxiety in their professions. A lot of people do, or in their lives. And it's like, a lot of this is just like, we're just learning how to navigate that better so we feel better while we're going through this different stuff. Again, we're not trying to be this Buddha on a hill. Something else that's interesting from that Christianity and Autosuggestion book is Brooks and Charles were talking about how Jesus always was like, he was, he basically told his disciples, he's like, take action, do something. He wasn't like, be passive. He said, do something. Again, if you're a biblical scholar, don't scold me for that, but it was an interesting part. And another reason I think it's worth reading that book. So the follow-up response was, no, it's the fact that I need a business partner before the deadline. Yeah, well, you need a business partner before the deadline. Again, there's different ways to look at that. One way is to say, is that do you absolutely know that's true? You want a business partner, but do you need one? I don't know. I don't know the specifics of the situation, but I know you can do your best to do the right thing today, whether that includes the business partner or not, Here's a good question. I've read that if you do something difficult, you gain confidence after. In my experience, even after doing the difficult thing, I don't feel any more confident. I love that. I've experienced that plenty of times myself. There's a lot of people in self-help world, even in the law of attraction space, to like lean into your fear, lean into your discomfort, and it will feel better next time. You'll learn more. And a lot of time I find that's just like not true. Like you seemingly bite off more than you can, just as much as you can handle, and then you get kicked around and you come back and you feel beat up. It's interesting when you compare that to, we were talking about like Matt Fury and Maxwell Maltz, psycho-cybernetics, how those guys really advocated for taking things lightly, at least like shadow boxing and just practicing with no pressure on yourself and building confidence that way, as opposed to doing something difficult, kind of, going from 0 to 100 quickly, and feeling all that stress, and then, learning from it, like, tough love learning. Maltz and Fury, they always talk about, well, you do something gently, you do something imaginatively in your mind, you get more and more comfortable. So then when you actually start doing it, you already have this level of comfort that you didn't have initially. That I personally resonate with much more. And this is probably a sensibility thing, depends on your sensibility. Person asking this question might have a similar sensibility, it sounds like. Where I gain confidence by doing something with not much pressure, and I do it over and over again, and I gain more confidence because of that. So for instance, like, I'm pretty good speaking in front of people, and I have been for a long time, just because when I was young, I felt, I think, a lot of social anxiety, like a lot of people do in front of speaking to people. But for whatever reason, I faced that very early on when I was probably like 10 or 12 or something like that. And so, I got comfortable speaking in front of people, relatively quickly, and, have been for a long time. But still, like before this thing today, even, I know I was walking over to the office and I was like, wow, I'm feeling nervous a little bit. And I've practiced that so many times, the skill, that the nerves don't even, it's not like, oh, we're not having a group session today. Like, I don't even care. But it's because in general, I've practiced it for a long period of time and in a gentle fashion. If I was just thrown to the wolves, in regards to some of that stuff, or in regards to many things in my life, I wouldn't have learned. I remember when I first got into real estate, I was not very good at renting apartments, and my broker, my boss, was like, don't worry about it. He's like, you'll get it, you'll figure it out. And so, like, he allowed me to like fail for like a month or two before like I started renting any apartments. If he had been like, well, you got to go out and rent an apartment next week or you can't come back to the office, I think I personally would have failed. Now, a lot of people would have succeeded with that model, but I would not have. So you have to know your own sensibility. And, generally speaking, my sensibility is one where I try to release as much pressure as possible, relax more, try less. And that doesn't mean just, relax more, try less isn't just like lying on the beach. It means I'm trying to relax more and depressurize as much as I can throughout the day. So if I bite off more than I can chew, I'm going to be feeling more pressure and probably not be as productive, successful, helpful to others. And when people tell me now to do something and it's a lot, I either just, I deflect it. I'm not going to do it unless I really have to do it. I mean, there's some things, we've spoken about this before too. There's some things that you're going to do no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to make sure that like my kids are taken care of no matter what, right? I don't care if that's hard or not. I don't care if that means that I have to get way out of my comfort zone to do that. I'm still going to do that. But most things, including most of these LOA ideas, I'm not going to do it. There's that great short guide called Happy Money by Lena Buenostar about like leaving money on the street. And she's got that great line in it, something like, she's like, she goes, a lot of things are hard. Like, I just don't go for hard things. If things are hard, I'm just not going to do that. And that's why she talks about happy money, because it's easy. So in my opinion, we have enough difficult things in our life and that we should try to minimize the difficult things unless we feel really invested and want to learn about them and experience them. But there's a lot of difficult things that people say you should do that in reality you can avoid. I prefer that approach. All right, so we're getting closer to the end here. If people have more questions, they can either speak up or they can write them down. How do you go to deeper levels of relaxation and maintain throughout the day? It's subjective. It's subjective. I said in a video recently, like people's levels of relaxation and how they feel, their level of flow is really going to depend. Like my level of, I'm a pretty tough critic of myself at this point. Like my level of like, if we're using like a 1 to 5 scale, like my 3 might be other people's 4 or 5s, like where like they're really relaxed, So it's a tough, it's a subjective scale. A lot, I mean, that's for me, that's most of the LOA practice is going to finding ways to be more relaxed throughout the day. How you do it is you got to find what makes you feel relaxed, what makes you feel more relaxed consistently, what are some of the go-tos that work well for you, and then you start playing with that stuff and experimenting how you can incorporate that in your life more. Maintain is a tough, I know exactly what you mean. I would probably phrase it the same way, but it's not about, in my experiences, maintaining it often as much as it's just being in the flow. Because as soon as you think you got something, it shifts, I find a lot of the time, right? Like life is so dynamic in that way. So like how can I be in such a way, in such a state, you could say, where like if something bad happens, it just falls off my shoulders, For me personally, I just find I try to stay present. And then I utilize all the tools I always talk about, talking out loud, when I have time, like meditating, active affirming, auto-suggestion, if I'm alone, if I can listen to music, or with people, listen to music. There's no one way. I mean, I have that short guide that's available on my website, the Relaxation Manifesto. I can email it to you if you don't have a copy. But you got to just find out for yourself what makes you feel more relaxed. And I don't pretend to be this perfect paragon of relaxation. There's plenty of times each day where I'm not relaxed. When I feel really relaxed, I still really haven't figured out like how to incorporate that into my daily life with like 2 young children and having stuff to do. Because when I'm really relaxed, I'm just like, I'm like gone, And so maybe that's something I can work on pragmatically, But I mean, one thing I will say that helps me is like, I don't judge myself harshly about it. I'm not like, oh, I should be more relaxed. I know I've been doing this stuff long enough that I know I'm doing my best. Like I said, most days, like, again, if I was to ask myself, if I'm going to die tomorrow, like, did I do okay today? I would say yes, So by wanting to be more relaxed, by wanting to feel more consistently in flow, which I think most people want, right? Like by having that intention, and then being aware of these principles and these ideas. And again, auto-suggestion, what we're suggesting to ourselves. A good one, for instance, is, I'm becoming more and more relaxed. Every day I'm becoming more and more relaxed or whatever. It helps. Again, you gain momentum. Something else towards meditating is just like, you can do things to kind of shock your state. If you feel stuck or stressed, you can do something abnormal, again, like moving all around or like blasting music or like doing 20 push-ups while screaming or something that just shakes up your state, or sitting very still and not judging your thoughts. That helps bring you back to baseline. But But again, it's an art, not a science. And we just get, again, we just get better and better at feeling more at peace being ourselves. Because isn't that what a deeper sense of relaxation really is? A lot of the time, it's just, I'm more at peace. You know, I've got plenty of times where like I feel angry or I feel active, but like I'm okay with it. And I don't know if like 7-8 years ago I would have been okay with some of those states now, let alone have a level of peace there at the same time. You know, you learn to trust yourself more and more. I think that's part of it. Thank you. Any other questions? If you have follow-up questions too, you can always email me at info@radicalcounselor.com or just at my personal email, which is radicalcounselor@gmail.com. And obviously, if you want to go into more detail about all this stuff in terms of like applying it individually to you, you know, I offer counseling sessions in regards to that and coaching sessions in regards to your individual needs and desires. So yeah, if we have no other questions, I think we'll wrap up. Thank you, everybody. This was good as always. It's really fun to I'm always reticent, probably why the fear came up today when we have a free one of these, because I don't know, I've been on the other end where I haven't hosted, but I've seen free sessions like this or whatever go haywire. So I really appreciate everybody giving each other space to ask questions, and you know, we always have good conversations, it seems like. So we'll keep on doing these until we won't. But yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, let me know. And until next time, enjoy.